Yes, sir. How you doing?
Look at that. You got my book in the background. Wow, I feel special.
Hey, only for the best. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I actually was like, wait, where's the link to this? I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. I was like, we've been communicating on my page, which I don't always communicate on a lot, versus my Facebook actual. Um,
Right.
I have the page and I have but anyways, I found it. It's all good.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah, I was trying to hook up my I don't use Zoom very often because it's kind of a this is the first time it's actually worked for me. It's screwed me over twice and for no reason. I don't know why. So I don't know. I've got a whole system. I got a mix pre that I record most of my episodes on. And it was acting kind of funny. So I just unconnected it and I just went off the computer audio for now. Because I didn't
Mm.
want to miss the recording because that's the last thing I need. But
Yeah, man. Well, I'm grateful you use Zoom just because like I know my platform works good on this, but if you would have went with another, I would have been okay with that too.
what are you using exactly for just your microphone? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah, I have a Rodecaster Pro and the microphone, and I run all my events and trainings with Zoom, so I'm just really comfortable. I know it sounds good.
right, right. Cool, cool, cool. Well, we'll just jump into it, man. I appreciate you coming on, and let's start with your story, which is the most important part of this book, and then we'll kind of jump into the toolkit, recovery toolkit. So, however long you need, 10, 15 minutes to kind of get into your story and really talk about it. And let's just get into it.
All right, sounds good. Well, my name's Jesse Harless, and I am an author, a speaker, a trainer, coach, and wasn't always that way, right? So I was someone who, as you get longer into recovery, you start to realize what's the root cause of why you were codependent or addicted and had these certain addictions. So, for me, it's really clear that some of this is probably intergenerational, that even started before I was even born and passed down to me. But I can only take responsibility for what I've done in this lifetime. And so, yeah, so like early on, there was trauma. My dad left at 4 years old. He was, using cocaine, and he was, an alcoholic, and he left, and he was in a car accident and left him, brain damaged, and he was permanently changed, and he was out of my life from that time on at 4. And so, kind of left an imprint in me that, there was not safety in this world. I was responsible at some level for that happening. And it was a lot of unworthiness really early on. And that carried with me all the way into adulthood and definitely fueled addiction, because at the root of a lot of this is it's not physical addictions. It's the root of it is, it's trauma, it's pain, it's controlling the pain, it's emotional addictions. So, that started early on and eventually, it led into um, addiction to games. I was addicted to online games at the beginning stages of massive multiplayer online games. I got addicted to some of the early ones. And yeah, man, and what does that mean, right? Because nowadays that's almost normal to play games for 5 hours or a night. And I see people doing that when I'm driving around. They're playing Fortnite and adults and all kinds of. So it's like, what is that addiction? But when I was that age, it was 8 hours every night. It got out of control. And then there was internet pornography. This is when high speed internet was introduced, and I just dove into that world as well. So there was this. I say my first drug was fantasy, so that's really where I played in that world of fantasy. And eventually, I got into high school, and that's where like I realized there was like this segmented group of people where there was like these people over here who are just not associated with any group. This group over here, it was very diverse too. I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, so we had a melting pot of cultures, and it was really, really exciting actually. But in high school, it was so weird. There was just so many diverse groups. But there was this one group that was like the popular group, right? Quote unquote. And, I just, at freshman year, I was like, I want to try to be part of that, even though I didn't feel I was a part of that. I didn't grow up in those same neighborhoods as them. I grew up in an apartment. But I tried, and it worked for a little while, and then it didn't work. And eventually long story short, I just quit all sports eventually, and just started to really get into addiction to the computer and to the games, and just started to not care, and just kind of fell into maybe like a depression. And then senior year, there was an intervention, and I was late, like, I don't even know how many times on record, maybe 35, 50 times. And they had an intervention with the headmaster and my mom and a teacher. And basically they said, if you want to graduate, you have to do this. And I did it, and I graduated, and I went to Plymouth State University here in New Hampshire. And I grew up in Lowell, Mass. So it was a big culture shock coming up to the mountains, growing up in the city, and, a smaller city, but nonetheless a city. And yeah, I got to Plymouth State College. I took 17 credits. I had a class called Think Intelligently. I was kind of doomed from the get-go. And I just dove into cannabis. I dove into all kinds of things. And I dove really deep into that stuff. And I was just learning how to numb out in other ways. So I had new ways to numb out. And I failed all my classes. I got arrested by a state trooper and charged. Got in trouble in a dorm, and I had to take classes on alcohol. I hit every jackpot. I failed every single class, so they let me back for some reason for a second semester, and I tried to pick it up and do better. And I did, 50% better. Wasn't enough. Got kicked out of college and came home. And, from there it was like, there was a series of events that happened. I came back. I found a person that was finding other ways to numb out. And then my dad dies, and I wasn't even close to him at all. He lived in a whole other state. But when he died, that night he died, I just started to dive into the world of cocaine, and I just dove headfirst into March Harder drugs really fast. And, 20, 21, 22, it was on. And a lot of dark places. We see a lot of dark places when you jump into this world of cocaine, heroin, and opioids. And so, I chased that until 22, and then I'll stop here. But until 22, I moved to Florida to escape my addiction, quote unquote. Yeah. And I went right into the pit of opioid pill kingdom, and had unbelievable access to opioids in Florida. And and then from there, it led to an arrest eventually.
Yeah. Which I was reading that in the book about the whole getting the pills from online, and I was like, man, honestly, that was pretty clever. But what I did want to ask was, do you think the biggest reason for a whole, your whole life is changing, and you think it, like, the biggest reason was because you didn't have a dad in your life present, like, there?
No, that wasn't the biggest reason. That was just a big, major core wound that happened early on that kind of created a false self of belief. And that false self of belief led to other beliefs. So I would say it's one of the root trauma wounds that happened with me early on. But is that the absolute reason? No.
Yeah. What would be what would be some of, like, the 2 or 3 of the root reasons that really caused a lot of this? So for the people that are listening, to really kind of get underway, because, people kind of, anything that might come up, people do not, the society we live in now is no one wants to treat the root cause. They just want to put a Band-Aid on everything. So do you mind going into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's the clarity I have today. I didn't have 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? So, like, I've celebrated 16 years of recovery in December, and the clarity that I have today is very different than, like I said, a few years ago. So, I mean, today I can look at it and say I was abandoning myself over and over and over again, because I didn't understand that you could create an inner bond between inside and bring happiness on the inside. And that's why, to me, everyone is addicted. people like to label people addicts, but if you're going to label someone an addict, then you're labeling them an addict because they drink a lot, or they, smoke too much cannabis, or they do fentanyl. But the reality is if they're the addict, then what is it? What do you call it when you're codependent, or you're addicted to controlling your wife, or you're addicted to the decisions of the neurochemicals to stay in a depressive state, and that addiction. So we got to be really careful with labels. And so the core, I mean, it's like, I can theorize what it was. It was definitely trauma. There was pain, but it was also the way that I was not self-regulating. I didn't understand how to self-regulate. I didn't know how to create that interconnection between myself to bring inner happiness. And so, there's different levels of why. And eventually I found out later on, like, how important it was to create that bond in between myself, find the happiness within, and to be able to then self-regulate my emotions, self-regulate my mind, body, and spirit, and be able to just show up and give my gifts to the world, which, so like, I didn't know that growing up. And why would anyone teach me that? We're culturally programmed to not be, special, or have gifts, or, trust your intuition and heart. It's the opposite. It's the mind. It's the test results. It's not the things that, maybe could connect someone to compassion.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The being able to control and regulate things, emotions, and all of the above is something that is very, it's not talked about a lot, I feel like, and it's definitely not done. Like, I grew up pretty old school, and by all means, my growing up was pretty amazing. But one of the things was, like, just not being able to articulate. And so especially when you're in a high stress environment, I can't even imagine, but just being in the environment with just all kinds of either negative energy, just no room for kind of moving forward, growing, and then not being able to, process those things in a way to where you're like, all right, I need to kind of do this, and figure out, and then move forward. I I'm glad I am where I am, but I definitely sympathize with people that that really can't, because it's a very valuable skill in a lot of ways, amongst just keeping yourself at bay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of opportunities now today to understand what is going on, and we can start to change things by bringing it into the educational system of, hey, okay, cool, I can learn algebra. What about how to breathe properly? Oh, I can learn, trigonometry, but what about how to manage my finances? Oh, I can learn, biology, but how do I deal with my trauma? And maybe we'll get there someday, but these are the things that, what if we address them as children, right? What if we address them as young adults, so that we can kind of almost co-create a new society where we're not like pointing the finger at people who have mental illness and addiction. We can just be like, oh my God, that's me too. But also to be like, how do we help these people? Because the bottom line, if you're in the shoes of a lot of the people who are judged, you would have done the same thing. And that's really hard for people to accept that. And it makes sense, but when you're in this world of addiction and mental health, and you've talked to thousands of people, and you're in it yourself and experienced it, you just realize, like, we are a lot more alike than we are different. And we realize, like, a lot of the judgment is just cultural programming. And so it's there, it's okay, but it's not okay too. So we can actually call it out and say, hey, we need a radical revolution of compassion and creating safety for people. When people feel safe, they're going to open up and be vulnerable. We just don't have a society that's like that, especially for highly sensitive people, right? So there's a lot of people in addiction and mental health who are highly sensitive people. And, they kind of navigate the world a little differently. They pick up energy of people a little differently. So a lot of times it's a little harder to regulate their nervous system. And we're not taught about any of this. You have to learn this, like, you don't even learn it in college. Like you have to like learn this when you go through the dark night of the soul. You have to like go through you have to like hit a bottom, wreck your life, or somehow meet this teacher along the way and stumble across this information. But I think we have an opportunity now to normalize a lot of this stuff and say, hey, mindfulness does matter. Hey, this does matter. Exercising and teaching this early on, and how do we integrate that with not only just exercise, but how about exercising our emotions, and like how do we deal with emotions? So we have a tremendous opportunity right now to start to change this, and I feel like it is changing. I know it's not at a grand scale, but I feel like there's a lot of people who are kind of moving this forward, and we just have to continue.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And what a better, advocator for mindfulness than yourself. And it really is a shame, it for sure is frustrating, all the trauma and turmoil that you had to go through in your life where you just finally figured it out. And then it's like, well, you feel let down by the system. And it goes to show you that you can't rely on the system for anything. And then you're your uh, own deal, own self educator in a way, or to seek out things. I didn't grow up in the public school. I was homeschooled, so I was definitely sheltered from a ton of nonsense in the world, and it set me up for a better, more successful life. But with social media, everything is at the tip of your fingers, which is can be bad, but also amazing, especially when you got guys like you constantly pushing your message forward and teaching people. Um, so yeah, hopefully we can make it a bigger deal than it already is.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna pull up your book. Let's dive into the toolkit. Um, so got it over here. I know on your book it says create daily to-do list. That's your first one, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. How do you go about to create your daily to-do list? What do you do specifically?
Yeah, so like the first part of the book, of the action steps of the book, which is the Fears Recovery Toolkit, is focus. So what does that mean, focus? Like it means focus on your recovery. And as soon as I say the word recovery, people tune out because like, well, I'm not in recovery. But recovery, you're in recovery. If you're on like a nutritional plan to try to like lose weight, if you're an entrepreneur who's a workaholic, if you're addicted to sex or so, you're in recovery from something. You're in recovery from your family tree, like. So here's the thing: is when I say recovery, I'm trying to make it more universal, and so focus on your recovery really means like, what's number one? If I focus on something, it expands. So if I'm writing down every single day, and some people don't like to write down, they like to keep it in their head. For someone like me, I need to write it down. So like every day I have a system where I write it down the day before. So the night before, I write down what I need to do the next day. And then I set myself up to also have it in a calendar. I like it in a digital calendar as well. And that took a long time to get to this system where I'm writing down my most important actions I'm going to do first. And in the book, I talk about writing down recovery actions first. Now, recovery actions are going to look different for every single person. If you're someone who's trying to, you're scaling a $50 million business, and your recovery actions might be like, I need to take time to calm down and be mindful because my anxiety is skyrocketing, right? That's going to be, so that recovery action might be, let me take 5 minutes in the morning to self-regulate and center myself. For someone like me, I have a morning routine. So like part of my morning routine is reviewing what I wrote the night before of what I got to do for the day. And then also not beating myself up if I don't get everything done, because you can carry it into the next day. But writing it down, you just don't forget it. And so a daily to-do list is just prioritizing what's most important for my recovery first, which is also creating that inner connection to self, creating that inner bond I was talking about. So creating that early on in the morning, and then you write down, okay, this is what I could do for my business. Obviously, family would be next, but then business. But what are you doing for yourself? Because the way you take care of yourself ripples out into your family, into your customers, into your life. So it's really like, that's the first part of focus, is write down those priorities, which I like to call recovery actions.
Right. Yeah, dude. I mean, when I was reading the book, I was like, man, I know this is a lot of it was focused around your story and recovering from addictions and this and trouble from and trials from life. But I was reading it and I'm like, dude, I've found like at least 5 or 6 things that I was like, those are can be used so many ways. And and especially this, creating a daily to-do list. My dad was so old school, he would never write down anything. It was always in his head, right? I can remember that. And I'm like, hey, you got a lot going on. Like, don't be arrogant enough to believe that you can remember everything, because you just can't. Your brain can only hold so much knowledge.
Yeah, and I have close friends who can do that, and they will never write down anything. And I respect that. I'm like, man, that's amazing. But for me, it causes me anxiety. So I always have this monitor of where is my anxiety. And if I write things down and have that, my anxiety is super low or gone. So I just do things to like regulate my anxiety levels and just my peace of mind. So by writing it down for me, it just, even if I don't do every action, it's just there. And I also, like I said, I also put it in a phone calendar as well, in a digital calendar. So if I don't have the one I wrote down with me, I actually have it in my phone calendar. So I'm always kind of like, and that's where I'm at today. There was one point where I only just did one of those, but today I have it in two places. But for most, I'd recommend keeping it really simple, just writing it down. And there's just power when you're writing stuff down. It's like when you start to journal. It's like I used to now I do like digital journaling a lot, but man, the first 14 years of my recovery, I only wrote down. I got 14 years of journals in the other room. And it's just something therapeutic about writing down what's going on. And I have actually a methodology in the book about a way you can journal. But, it took a long time for me to find a practice that works. But I'll come back because that's a whole different action step in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. The journaling. All right, cool. Second was build your recovery team. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, this is critical. This is critical. I don't care where you are in your life, because you don't have to call it a recovery team. You could call it your support team. You could call it the people who got your back, your inner circle, your mastermind. So I like to call it the recovery team because my life has driven me to a path of addiction, recovery, and mental health. So I'm using the language that is spoken by the people who are, coming to me for help. So and the world that I've been in for a long time. So recovery team is, who are those people that you can be your authentic self with, and they don't reject you or try to give you advice when you're just trying to share your heart. You're just trying to share your grief. You're just trying to share your pain, and they're not trying to correct you. So your recovery team is probably not going to be your mom, unless your mom is an incredible, there are moms that can hold that space. It might not be your brother either, or it might be, but it's really people who can hold that space for you, and you could be 100% authentic without judgment. And they're not easy to find. But in time, I found at least 5 people, and that's what I recommend. Find one person at first and then build it to 3 to 5 people. And people have a really hard time with this. Even very successful people have a hard time with building their recovery team because of the shame they feel. They actually feel a shame to ask for help, even for things that are simple. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Get people on this team who you can come to and say, hey, I'm really stressed out about my marriage. Hey, I'm really stressed out about this situation of these big opportunities I have. And just being able to do that, because that's really what's going to drive you to stress. And that's really going to drive you to your drug of choice, right?
Yeah. And that's so important. For me, it'd be just like my core group of people for business and just growing. And I have my web developer, Chris. Shout out Chris. He's the best. He's the guy, man. We can sit there and talk hours for business. We're both married. He's got kids. I've got one coming on the way. And that's a guy I can say anything to. And then I actually have a friend in Tennessee. He's in Illinois. And then Adam is in Tennessee. He owns his own construction company as well. And he's the same thing. I can do the same thing with that guy. So yeah, 2 to 3 people I have right now, I would say. So very fortunate, because you're right. They're not easy to find at all. Took me years to build those relationships.
Definitely. Yeah, it can take you years. But I would say in the beginning, if you're struggling, you're just trying to put it together, just reach out to people or go on to online groups, or like go and attend in-person groups and start to find these people. You'll find them. But in the beginning, you definitely get one as fast as you can.
Yeah. And on your note, real quick, on asking for help, people, it's crazy what people will not ask for help. Like, and I'm willing to give help to anyone. And just like you're coming on my podcast, which is a, tremendous blessing, and you didn't have to, but you did anyway. But I was willing to ask, even though, probably my percentage of being able to pay forward is not as great as I would like it to be. But that's what's drove my career as a business owner, because I build pools for a living is my main thing I do. And when it comes to concrete and the actual structure of the pool and different materials, laying stones, like I'm asking people all the time. I mean, sometimes I'll make 20 phone calls in a day, calling one of my concrete guys, 30 years of experience, another guy who's been laying pavers for 30 years, 40 years. Like I will call everybody I know, and no one should ever get upset because you ask them a lot. There's a certain amount of like taking up someone's time, but asking is honestly what's made me. I've had been instilled in me since a young age, trying to be humble and ask people, and then also be willing to give back when the time comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there's people who come to me and say to me, "Hey, Jesse, I want to get some help with starting a business." And I'll say to them, "Okay, what's the business you want to start?" And then they tell me, and I say, "All right, who's the person that is as close to you as possible in actual physical location that you can go and just buy them a cup of coffee and sit down and ask them how they built their business?" And as soon as I say that to someone, they're like, no, I already tried that. I'm like, when did you try that? Well, I didn't try that, but I don't want to do that. It's like, okay. It's like even those simple tasks, that's where if someone's not going to take that initial action, I have to kind of release that from myself and my energy, because it's like, you got to get outside your comfort zone. Even when asking for help, it's really difficult. So like whether it's asking someone to mentor you or asking for a life and death situation to help you with addiction or mental health, it's like, do it, because that's what's going to have that, oh my God, I can do this. Like it is okay. It is safe. And there's just probably blocks there of why it's not safe. But just even like me building my businesses I've built, it's really just me asking for help. And then once I did that, I realized, oh, you also got to add value to people. So like, I realized like how important it is to add value too, because sometimes you can ask for help, but sometimes when it comes to like businesses and mentors, sometimes asking for help is like, well, what type of value have you added to them? And that's a little different than the recovery team, by the way. That comes in the elevate your life section, which is the next part of the book, where you build your mentors, or you choose your mentors. But still, in some ways, you got to get out of your comfort zone to ask for help sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. All right, number 3, keep yourself accountable in recovery. Is that just the core group of people that you have already found in the beginning, and then just keeping? Because I know you said you're on a daily chat with people, friends of yours that you've become friends with, kind of keep each other accountable. And how does that look when you're keeping each other accountable? Phone calls, texts, emails, like how do you guys do it?
Yeah, it's all those things. I mean, accountability is huge. You can have your recovery team. If you never contact them, what's the point of the recovery team? So the accountability is key. That's why I followed it up with that. So I actually say in the book, in the next 24 hours, reach out to those people on your recovery team and thank them for your gratitude for them being in your corner. So it's so key that once you have these people, you reach out to them. And so even if they're busy, they're going to get back to you. So reach out to them, leave the best. So what I like to do is, people like to text me, like leave me texts, and that's cool because that's a low energy thing. So I'm like, yeah, boom. And I can't talk to every person every day who reaches out, but I can at least send them a text back. But eventually you got to get on the call with them. You got to get on a phone with them or meet them in person. And if you can't meet in person, make sure it's at least a phone call or a Zoom call now. We have so much technology. So that's all the accountability is just stay in touch with them. And in the beginning, it might be every day, and then eventually it's weekly. And there's some of the closest people on my recovery team, I don't talk to for weeks at this stage, where I'm at today. And that's okay, because we feel each other in the field. We know each other. We're like, guys, okay, I know they're doing good, and then if I need them, they got me. And there are some people, though, honestly, for over a decade, I stay in touch with them every day via text.
Yeah. Yeah, so the relationships you built and those friendships you developed, you just want to keep hanging out with them, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so the fourth one, right, would be find purpose in recovery. I know you wrote your book, and this is a big part of your purpose. What, for lack of better words, what's your purpose through your recovery?
Yeah. So in the book, I took Jack Canfield's purpose activity, which is in his book, The Success Principles. That book was um, a profound awakening in some ways. When I was listening to that book as I was still in my 9-to-5 job, I devoured that book and studied it. And I was like, whoa, these are really powerful success principles. So I wanted to kind of honor Jack by putting his purpose statement activity in my book, because it was really profound for me when I first did it. So I'll share what my purpose statement is, which comes directly from the book, which can kind of lead you down the path of like, what is my actual purpose? So purpose changes too. It's like my purpose today might be different in 6 months, but my purpose right now and my purpose statement from doing the activity that's in my book is my purpose is to use my passion, intuition, and authenticity to help others to genuinely express the unique stories and strengths in a loving and powerful way.
Awesome.
That
Awesome.
comes directly from that activity that's in my book, the last activity in the first action focus on your recovery.
Awesome. Awesome. I got it right here. What have you done? I haven't asked you real quick here. Besides writing the book, what other adventures have you gotten into? Because I know you said you started some businesses. If you don't mind, yeah, touch
Yeah,
on that.
yeah. My primary business when I left my job at Verizon, I had a career at Verizon in sales, management, sales, and B2B for 14 years. And I left that at the peak of my career to start a business called Entrepreneurs in Recovery. And that business was really to find entrepreneurs who are in recovery that are operating at a higher level so I could learn from them and then mentor the people that are in my life that are not entrepreneurs that maybe want to be, who are in recovery from mental illness and addiction. So that was kind of like the initial, maybe I should have started a nonprofit right away. When I look back, I'm like, maybe I should just been a nonprofit and raise money, but it's all good. And I still will create that nonprofit soon. But I basically started a coaching business. That's when I started. So I got certified in coaching. I had mentors who were coaches. And then from there, what ended up happening really quickly, though, is I started to learn the art of facilitation at a really high level with a company called Exchange. And then that showed me how I could not only design and choreograph collective crowdsourcing of strengths and taking people through a cycle of change through conversations worth having and creating safety through the facilitation. I learned that I could also train that. So my business ended up being coaching, facilitating, and training. And that's what I do today. Those three things are my primary business. And the training right now is really picking up. And that's really cool because I'm niched into my space very deeply. So I'm very deep into the world of addiction and mental health. And it's really cool. So that's where my primary trainings are. But I do go to companies. I've facilitated a workshop in January with Hubble Power Systems. They're a 15,000 employee company, and I got to run a 2-hour training with them on resilience and mental health. So it's showing you the tides are changing. Things are changing in the world, and mental health is becoming a bigger conversation, especially with the legalization of cannabis and whatever, all the things that are happening. You're seeing a big change in the way they treat mental illness. And when I say big, it's a slow change, but it's starting.
Yeah, and it's super cool because when you get into all that, it goes across the board. The mind is all the way business, relationships, your personal life, and so learning how to harness that is just key. And so that's really cool that you're doing all that. That's awesome. So that's the end of that chapter. What I can't quite remember. What's the next part of your recovery? Is that kind of like the basis of it, or you have more going on with the your toolkit?
Yeah, so like the toolkit has focus, elevate, appreciate, resilience, and self-care. So there's 30 actions total. And I don't expect anyone to take all 30 actions in the book in 1 week. I'd actually recommend that you spread it out over 3 to 6 months. But you can do a lot of this stuff right away, especially in the first step of focus. So yeah, there's a lot of action steps. That's kind of like how I quote unquote recovered or really started to get better, is I took a lot of action, and a lot of it was even almost reckless at times and rigid because I was like so going, but I realized like you can balance all of this. You can balance a lot of the action that you're taking with things to self-regulate yourself as well. So yeah, that's kind of how the book ends, is with self-care. That's the last step, and obviously it's not the last thing you should do. It's really important you do it right away, but it goes through a lot of that. How do you self-regulate?
Right. Got you. Um, what, how important has meditation been? I know you talk about it. I know, Hal Elrod talks a ton about it with his Miracle Morning. How important has it been, and or how influential has it been in your life, meditating?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big stigma when you say the word meditation. So it's really interesting when you say meditation, people get turned off right away, especially like more of the A-type personalities. So I think like I like to call it self-regulation, but you can also call it meditation or mindfulness. And because if I go into a company and I say, "Hey, we're going to meditate right now," they're going to be like, "Okay, I'm shutting off my camera. I'm out of here." But the reality is like it's really about mindfulness. But yes, meditation has been a huge part of my journey, and it's been probably every day for the last I don't know, 8 to 10 years. So it's been a really big, profound practice. And again, it's not just like holding, closing my eyes and getting in a certain position. It's beyond that. I do active meditations and active visualizations and heart math practices and all these things that are not even considered meditation, but it really, really is helpful.
What let's just say, just for me, what would be your recommendation for meditation? How would I start? Because I get up in the morning, go to work, come back, whatever. It's pretty standard. Is it like 4 or 5 minutes, just kind of sitting there, just kind of thinking and just blocking out all the noise, or how would you recommend me starting getting into it? Because I've seen it all across from a lot of people, and I'm very intrigued into it, honestly.
Yeah, I would say you nailed it. 4 to 5 minutes. Take 4 to 5 minutes every single day for the next week. And in those 45 minutes, I want you to just begin the practice with your heart focused breathing. So you're going to just start the practice with closing your eyes, and you can even place a hand on your heart. And you're going to start breathing into your heart, literally. You're going to put your intention as you breathe. Breathing in for 5 to 7 seconds into the heart, holding it for 5 or 7 seconds. Releasing it for 5 or 7 seconds. You're going to do that for about 3 to 5 breaths. So you're just going to imagine your breath is moving in and out of your heart, breathing slower and deeper than usual. That's the first few, let's say the first minute. And then let's say the first 2 minutes. And then the next part is you're just going to start to make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling of appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. And this could be something you love. It could be a person you love or a friend. It could be a pet or an animal. It could be a certain place you like to visit in nature. It could be a recent accomplishment or overcoming a transformation. But I want you to just focus on that feeling for the next 2 minutes as you continue the heart focused breathing. And then the last minute is really just kind of radiating those feelings to your whole body, like radiating those feelings. And that's it. That's 45 minutes. Do that for the next week and or 30 days, and then monitor your results. Do some journaling at the end of the 7 days. How do you feel? Do you feel more centered, calm, and collected? Do you feel more anxiety? Do you feel, and then you can kind of play with that. But that technique I just said is called the quick coherence technique. It's actually a science-backed technique. It has evidence-based from the Institute of Heart Math. And that's been used with the U.S. Navy. It's been used with many, many, many law enforcement agencies. My friend in Colombia, they use it all the time. He works for the state police in Colombia. They're using that. Many Fortune 50 companies, 500 companies using it. So I just gave an example of a practice that is not even called meditation. It's just called self-regulation. And it's really powerful. So I actually do that, and I teach that. I actually do that practice every morning alongside a meditation that's guided, that's from one of my mentors. So you just find what works for you, but start with 4 or 5 minutes. That's the sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know why people have a bad connotation for meditation. I guess maybe they think of Buddha or the yin and the yang, just like sitting there like the what do you call samurais or something. I don't know, but I've seen so many people use it, and but just being able to control your mind and breathing. And I've seen a lot of people with the Wim Hof method, that are just using his techniques, breathing techniques, and really like thriving in a lot of ways. They're contributing to those methods. So definitely something I'm going to be trying to incorporate into my day for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Wim Hof, and in my book, in the self-care chapter, I mentioned cold showers, and it's pretty controversial, right? Because a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't see the benefits. Where's the science? But it's anecdotal, a lot of it. There is peer-reviewed study on, cold showers reducing depression, anxiety because of the norepinephrine release. But there's not going to be a lot of science in something that's free that you can do every day. So, but like the cold showers is something that I incorporate with the breathing. So that's a really powerful practice, is practicing the deep breathing, the centered breathing. Some people do the Wim Hof. I just have like a centered breathing practice as I take cold showers. So that's another thing you can incorporate to help regulate the nervous system as well.
Yeah, yeah. Back to journaling. Writing with your hand versus on a tablet, I've always found that's like, because you said it, it's just I don't know, it almost means more, but it just feels different. And I know like the retention rate is in the what's it, at least 50 to 70% when you're writing things down physically. And so like people listening, like if if you can, have to do it on electronics, cool. But I recommend that you do it on your on paper, because it's kind of cool. You get to see it. Plus you get better handwriting, right? And then I don't know, it's just kind of soothing in a way. Is that what you think?
Yeah, like in 2005 is when I started my first journal. So my first month of recovery from opioid and cocaine addiction and many other addictions, I started to journal because one of my first mentors says, "Why don't you journal every day?" And I had this blue journal that I bought at the store, and every day I'd write down in that journal. What I'd write in that journal is basically the highlights of the day, maybe things that were great, things that weren't great, and then I'd write an affirmation every single day. And so yeah, definitely writing it down. And again, this 2005, smartphones hadn't taken off yet. So, there wasn't like today where you get all these incredible apps and stuff. So I started to journal, and I did that for 14 years, and every day. And so when I went to write this book, which was really cool, was I could go back to the journals 8 years ago, 14 years ago, and read them and be like, wow, my level of consciousness has changed so much. And so it's really humbling to look back and see that. So it can be a great gift for your children. It can be a great gift for the legacy you want to leave, to just journal, because you can look back and see where you were with your anxiety, with your addictions, or even if you don't have addictions, which I believe everyone has. But if you just can look back and see the growth and see all the hardships and resilience you had. And then, so today, I do use a digital journal, but it's not that I even recommend that. It's just, out of habit, I use Evernote now, but I journaled physically for 14 years, folks. So I would recommend doing that. I kept all the journals, and will I go back to a physical journal again? Probably. Right now, I'm just feeling this new method out and see how it feels. And it doesn't feel the same, but I do love the pen to paper.
What are you when you're doing an Evernote? Are you just got like an iPad with a pen, or are you just typing it?
Yeah, I'm just typing it. I have a fears journal framework that's in the book. So in the book, I have the fears framework for journaling, and I follow that framework.
Okay, let's expound on that a little bit. How do you journal, or how do you recommend someone starting to journal with what they write, how they lay it out, and whatnot?
Yeah. So what I do is the acronym FEARS: focus, elevate, appreciate, resilient, self care. I have a question for each one of those. So focus, how did you focus on your recovery today? So I'll write in there, okay, today I focus on my recovery by, doing my self-regulation practices. And then I reach out to my buddy, Pete, who's on my recovery team. and then elevate your recovery. How did you elevate your life in recovery? Well, I did that by reading some of my book that I love reading on, the inner bonding process or untethered soul, or maybe I talked to my mentor. That's how I elevated my life. And then 3, appreciate your recovery. How did I have gratitude today for my life? And I write down the things I was so grateful for from the day. Then resilience and recovery is, where did I get out of my comfort zone? That's a really big one that gets left out of a lot of journaling practices, I think, is where did I get out of my comfort zone? And every day there's a place where today I got out of my comfort zone. And if I didn't, that to me is just, I don't want to be rigid, but I always want to be kind of stretching myself every day. And so the last one is self-care. So how did I take care of myself? And the self-care is like, oh, I did some earthing. I jumped in the stream and the cold water. Even I bought some new plants and I take care of them. Like, that's self-care. Or I did a sound bath, so that's self-care. So that's what I start with. That's the process I start with. And maybe I'll create a journal for everyone so they have that template. But it is in my book. And so after that, then I write down what are the highlights from the day, and I'll kind of put the highlights of the day, and then anything else I think I should be capturing so I can come back later too. Even like info sponging. One of my mentors talks about info sponging, and just anything that came in that's new information that I want to get on that journal so that I might come back to create new ideas for business opportunities or for helping the world, serve the world.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I need it. I've been lacking on my journaling. I'm in and out, and so that's going to be awesome. I'm going to definitely follow a lot of that framework and kind of just start, because like you said, with leaving a legacy, also you can look back maybe a year or 2 years and kind of see how you've grown, intellectually or in your relationship or in your business, and you kind of have almost like a moment where, I'm improving, because it's very easy to get caught up in today with everything being so fast and busy, to where you're just like, I'm not moving forward. I'm kind of stagnant. But yeah, that's definitely like a good tracker. So
Yeah, well, and thank you for asking these questions, man. You're asking really good questions to bring a lot of helpful data that I've really dedicated my life to doing. So thank you for your questions too.
yeah, no, I appreciate it, because I know I can see the passion with this your whole progression of life and how it's all came to be, and it's awesome, and it's pretty cool. So I definitely am trying to extract as much information for the audience as long with me as well, because I'm intrigued too, and I want to learn. So yeah, of course, but we're getting to the end, because I know you said you got an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time. So who mentors Jesse? Who mentors you?
Well, just like in the book, I say in a lifetime, you might have 100 mentors. You might have 150 mentors, right? So
Yeah.
there's so many people I'd have to shout out, So,
Okay.
I don't know where to begin. There's a lot of mentors.
Yeah. You got you just with I would say, I'm trying to phrase the question with mental, and then also with business. I'm sure you have like a group of people also, building your team, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's kind of what it looks like, for sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. There was a guy that named John Berghoff, who started the Exchange Company, and I reached out to him in 2016 when I just was at the peak of my career at Verizon. I had just won a really prestigious award called President's Cabinet. I was at the peak of my Verizon career, but I got around this guy John Berghoff, and he left an imprint on his ability to lead and facilitate at an event I went to. And I literally messaged him on Facebook, and I was like, hey, would you be my mentor? Because I didn't really know how that whole process worked. Even though I had mentors up until that point, they kind of naturally happen. And this one I was like, how do I do this? He doesn't know me, but he saw me. So I reached out to him and said, hey, would you? And he was like, Jess, I would love to. He's like, I don't have the capacity to do that right now, but he's like, here's some people you could talk to that might be able to, which was really cool. And but today he actually is my mentor. So it's funny how life works like that. And it's not like it's not like I call him on the phone all the time, but he's just I'm just in his. I'm so dedicated to the work he's bringing to the world, and I'm bringing that into my world. So we're kind of like both adding value to each other, you know? And it's, and that's how I look at a relationship of a mentor. It doesn't always happen like that, but you want to add value to them. And so I would say John definitely is a business mentor and someone who really, really helps me to really go much bigger than what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, so for someone who wants to get a mentor, especially with a high caliber, like you're down here and they're way up here when it comes to, in life, what is something that you would tip or something you give someone? Because when you're at that point, you're trying to find a place to give value. And so like, for me, I want to be coached by a billionaire locally. He owns the Indiana Pacers is my goal. And so he's actually got a similar background that I do. Him and his brother started a real estate company, me and my brother in business together. He sold it and then he bought the Pacers. Now he owns a book review company. So I'm like, hey man, maybe this might work out sometime. But for someone that's trying to get someone like that, what's like a tip you'd give them? Because maybe they don't see like the value they can provide, but they want to.
Yeah, I mean, someone like that, it's going to be, to get in his energy, to get in his, field of influence, it's going to not be as simple as maybe, there's someone down the road who owns a plumbing and heating company and you want to start a plumbing and heating company, you could just show up and maybe ask for the owner. So I think in that situation, what I would do is I would figure out a way to add massive value to him. So I'd figured out a way of find what he's passionate about. If he runs a nonprofit, what is he most passionate about, and make a donation to the nonprofit, or actually go and give your time, and if you don't have money to give your time and give that to him, and just start to take those actions. And then eventually, you never know, you might get right in front of him at one point and just be able to say straight out what you're looking for. And he might straight out tell you yes or no, but you went for it, or he might have something that surprises you. So, just figure out a way to get into their sphere of influence, but don't do it from like this place of taking. If you're a taker, it's not going to be good. So be a giver. And then with that energy, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. The Bible says it's more blessed to give than to receive. And that's like it really is, all the way down the line. But awesome, because that's an awesome advice. So to wrap this up, because we're getting close, I want to ask you, I ask my audience, my authors that come on at the end of the show. First, what's your favorite book?
Wow. Well,
if there is one, because there's millions of books that have changed my life personally, but if you could name one, like.
Oh man. Geez. There's so many. And as I continue to like expand my levels of consciousness as with my awareness, I realize like some books have really rose to the top to help. But, someone yesterday mentioned this book, and so I'm going to mention it. The Untethered Soul, I think, is for some people a little overwhelming. But if you really listen to that, I listened to that book on Audible. I try to listen to it every year, and for the last several years, and I just try to do a listen every year to it, because it's really profound of what he's trying to say, Michael Singer, with the mind and the critic that's in your mind, and it's just really profound. So I would say, is that my absolute all-time favorite? Probably not, but it's one that's coming up right now, and someone mentioned it yesterday, so I'd say that book. Listen to it on Audible too; it's cool.
Yeah, I'm a big Audible guy. Working, and I work. I'm standard, anywhere 8 to 14-hour day. So driving a little bit here and there, Audible is like, that's my go-to for sure.
Yeah, and just to let you know, my book is on Audible, and I read the book. So just to let anyone know, they're like, I don't got time to read this guy's book. Well, it's like listening to a podcast. I read it. So.
And cool. By the way, I love it when authors read their own books. It kind of gets, you get to know them a little better. So that's absolutely super cool. One last thing. I know you got a lot of things going on, but kind of give me a little, I want to be able to find a way. I know I'm trying to provide as much value as I can. with pushing out your message to my audience. But what's something else possibly that you may need, or something that offhand that I could help you with, or something that you're dealing with right now, maybe that you need, but you haven't found an answer to, if that's even a thing? Because I want to be able to give as much as I can to you as possible.
Okay, well, it's really simple. I collaborate with a company called iCare, and iCare is the International Center for Addiction Recovery Education. And they have a product that I've collaborated with them on called Certified Facilitator in Addiction Awareness. And this product is specifically to bring your workshops that we train you in this training. And when I say you could have your own too, but we teach you how to do this with an actual certificate to bring to companies. So it's bringing addiction awareness in this facilitation certification into businesses. So, if anyone's looking to do that or they want more information, reach out to me. So that's what I have so much love and respect for Dr. Jean LaCour, the founder of iCare, but she's been doing it 26 years. And so that's really where, if someone wanted to help me, is like, just check it out. If anyone, if it's an HR professional, if it's a mental health counselor, if it's someone really passionate about serving the space and bringing it to companies, come check out, because they have other certifications, but come check out that and that training I'm doing. The next one's in May. So that's what I would say, is check that out. You can go to my website, jesseharless.com, and go to the live training tab, and you can click on it and then see all of the information about it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Harless. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we can, now on the next book, and write the next book, or before that, maybe we can get on another call and talk about some more. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, Jonathan. This was an awesome, awesome show. And definitely, man, I have another book I'm actually writing. So we'll have to get on and talk about that another time.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Well, I will let you go, and thank you again so much, and you have a good evening.
All right. You too. Thanks, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye.